So I don't feel like I have a ton of power in the classroom, but I do. Generally, if I tell somebody to put their phone away, it happens. If I ask somebody to turn off their music, it happens. More than that, I feel empowered to ask those kinds of questions. Like, I don't feel weird about asking somebody to put their phone away or lower their music. I am the giver of grades and all of that. But then I leave school. When I walk out the door and onto the bus, I no longer have that authority. And sometimes somebody has their phone out and is playing loud music, and it's distracting everybody else on the bus. Like, I just want to read, and there's distracting music. But my role within the community of bus riders is very different from my role within the community of my school. My identity shifts. It transforms. It's fluid depending on where I am and who I'm with. There are plenty of in-group communities in this play, similar to like the in-group community of a classroom or the in-group community of people riding a bus. Characters are going to struggle with inclusion and finding a role for themselves within those communities. Antonio has a lot of authority when he's on the Rialto, when he has money. But if he doesn't, his role changes. His identity will transform. We've already seen Shylock, for example, try to carve out a role for himself in Venice, try to shift his identity to gain respect on the Rialto. And we've already seen Jessica transform herself into a boy so that she could transform herself into a Christian and transform herself into Lorenzo's wife. She's playing with her identity in order to work within the context of Christian Venice. So today, we're going to focus on the theme of transformation as we read Act 3 play by play. So Act 3 begins with the Venetian gossips, concerned about Antonio, confronting an outraged Shylock. They ask if he's really going to take a pound of flesh. What would he even do with it? His response is epic. To bait fish withal. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. He then launches into a beautiful rant about the qualities of shared humanity. How we're all fed by the same food, warmed by the same sun, we all laugh when tickled, and so on. And after listing all of these, he asks, if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? Why, revenge. The villainy you teach me I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will be better the instruction. So let's unpack that speech for a second. Antonio has abused Shylock on the Rialto because Shylock does not lend money without also taking interest, as a Christian would if he were lending money to another Christian. We can assume that Shylock has felt a lot of pressure to act Christian in a bunch of other ways as well, like he's forced to accept dinner invitations and all that. And here, he turns that pressure that they've put on him against them. They all want him to behave more like a Christian, and so he will, just not in the ways that they think. His patient sufferance will now turn to revenge. Revenge he's learned from Christian example. And this is just amazing. You can imagine a Christian audience watching this and hearing Shylock's question, what does a Christian do if he is wronged? And the answer should be, with the audience, a resounding mercy, forgiveness, turn the other cheek, and all that. It's like a foundational Christian belief, but that's not the way that the Christians around Shylock behave. This line calls out the deep hypocrisy of the Christian community in this play, makes the audience painfully aware of it. The other thing to note here is that, to borrow a phrase from Hamlet, Shylock's thoughts, they turn bloody in this moment. In order for this play to end in comedy, to end in marriages rather than deaths, Shylock is the obstacle that has to be overcome. If Lorenzo and Jessica are going to be married, if Bassanio is to find unqualified success in his quest for Portia, Shylock has to be overcome. He has turned towards revenge here and become the villain of the play. And so, at the very moment that Shylock is transformed into that villain, he is humanized. But not only that, he lets us know that our sympathies for Bassanio, Antonio, and Portia are problematic. They're hypocrites. Shylock tells us this in no uncertain terms, and in ways that we in the audience cannot deny, that Shylock is the villain our protagonists have created. And to follow this speech up, Shakespeare brings onto the stage Tubal, the Hebrew man who lent Shylock money in Act 1. In alternating lines, Tubal tells Shylock news of his daughter and news of Antonio. He's pretty upset with Jessica. He says he wants her dead at his feet with the jewels in her ears. It's definitely not Shylock's best moment. It's Shylock at his worst. And his emotional range here is almost comic. When Tubal tells Shylock about how his daughter spent in Genoa 80 ducats, Shylock flips out. He's full of rage and sadness. But when Tubal tells him how Antonio also had some bad luck, his mood completely changes. He's giddy with happiness. He even laughs. And the scene goes back and forth like that. News of Jessica, news of Antonio. This scene could easily be played for laughs. Shylock as an emotional clown alternating between extremes of rage and joy, back and forth. This push and pull between the two poles ends, though, when Tubal tells Shylock about one of Antonio's creditors. One of them showed me a ring that he had of your daughter for a monkey. And this line moves Shylock out of his rage-joy spiral and plants him firmly in a state of depression. Out upon her, thou torturest me, Tubal. It was my turquoise. I had it of Leah when I was a bachelor. I would not have given it for a wilderness of monkeys. This one line gives Shylock all the backstory that we need. He had a wife, Leah. She gave him a ring. And objects like these have sentimental value. Shylock would have never given up that ring. Again, at the moment that the play's structure forces him into an antagonistic role, he is given to us in full humanity, more complex and more authentic than anything we've seen out of any of the so-called heroes of this story. Antonio and the others want to believe that Shylock values money above all else, but this line makes it clear that this is an identity that they have given him, not one that he actually inhabits. Also, that's the first ring that will appear in the story. There will be 2 more, which brings us back to Belmont, where we pick up on the casket plotline. Bassanio's made it, and he's ready to make his choice. Portia says that she wishes that he would delay his choice so that they could have more time together. He insists on making his choice quickly, and Portia then plays a song. Since he's insisting on making his choice, she's gonna first give him a song. And the first 3 rhymes of this song all rhyme with the word lead. So, is she manipulating the game? Maybe. But she's still operating within its rules. She's perhaps just working around the rules so that the game fits her purpose. She's very good at that. After Bassanio chooses correctly, Portia says some interesting stuff. She says, "You see me, Lord Bassanio, where I stand, such as I am." I've heard productions have had her in this moment take off a blonde wig or have some other display of vulnerability. Or I've heard of productions that have her deliver this line in a way that shows the full scope of her wealth. Portia can be read in diverse ways, and that's actually going to be the topic of the final video in the series. For now, let's just move on to some of the other things she says here. But the full sum of me is some of something, which to term engross is an unlessoned girl, unschooled, unpracticed, happy in this. She is not yet so old, but she may learn. Happier than this, she is not bred so dull, but she can learn. Happiest of all is that her great gentle spirit commits itself to yours to be directed, as from her lord, her governor, her king. And these lines just appear strange to me. This seems to be the opposite of the Portia that we saw in Act 1. There, her only lament was her ability to choose was not her own. Here, she appears transformed in front of Bassanio, saying that she's ready to accept a subordinate role. She says that she's unlessoned, and I mean, we haven't read Act 4 together yet, but for all her faults, Portia is probably the most intelligent and certainly the most competent character in this play. So maybe she's not being so sincere here, or maybe she is actually humble? I don't know. I'm going to work through all of those feelings about Portia in the final episode. But here, in Act 3, she submits her will to Bassanio and then gives him a ring. It's ring number 2. And as she does, she infuses the ring with symbolic meaning. She says, "Myself and what is mine to you and yours is now converted. But now I was the lord of this fair mansion, master of my servants, queen over myself, and even now, but now, this house, these servants, and this same myself are yours, my lord. I give them with this ring, which when you part from, lose, or give away, let it presage the ruin of your love, and be my vantage to exclaim on you. So, in short, whoever has this ring has control of Portia and Belmont. If he gives it away, it will be her vantage. He obviously says he'll never part with the ring, and after that, we learn that Gratiano and Nerissa have had a secret relationship this whole time, and that they're going to be married as well. And that's ring number 3. This play seems headed towards comedy and marriage, but then, at that moment, a letter arrives for Bassanio. Antonio has indeed defaulted on his loans, and he asks Bassanio to return to Venice to see him before he is forced to pay his loan with a pound of flesh. Bassanio makes plans to travel back to Venice, where Antonio has given up trying to plead with Shylock, who is clearly out for revenge. Portia then leaves her house to Lorenzo and Jessica to live happily alone in paradise. She tells them that she's going to go to a monastery while the boys are away, but really, she plots her own trip to Venice. Her and Nerissa will dress as men. Why? Nerissa asks. What kind of question is that? Portia responds. If Portia is going to take control of this situation, she has to place herself in a position to do so. That means being in Venice, and it also means being a man, because this is a patriarchal culture. Act 3 ends with a strange scene in Belmont. Lancelot is alone with Jessica, and he's just spewing a bunch of horrible anti-Semitic nonsense. He tells her that it doesn't matter that she has given up her identity and converted to Christianity, that her sins are hereditary, that she'll never be truly a part of the group. And Lancelot is the worst, but it does seem like every time he opens his mouth, he reveals a new layer to this play. In Act 3, Scene 5, he claims that Jessica's transformation, her conversion, and her marriage are insufficient, and that highlights the intersections of in-group status within the play. If we pause to think about this for a second, we can arrange all the characters of this play according to different sorts of hierarchies of power. Like, we can organize them in terms of financial power. In that case, we'd have Antonio, Portia, and Shylock with in-group status, and Bassanio, Gratiano, and Lorenzo trying to gain access to that group. Or we can arrange the characters according to political power. In that case, the status of the contract has supremacy, but the Duke and judges seem to have in-group status as the others look to them for protection under the law. Or we can arrange the characters according to their cultural power or their cultural prestige. In that case, Bassanio and his group of Christian frat boys have in-group status, and Jessica, Shylock, Portia, and Antonio all aspire to get closer to the center of that group. Or we can arrange the characters according to gendered power, which comes with the freedom to inherit money in uncomplicated ways or marry who one wishes. In that case, the bros all have in-group status, while Jessica and Portia have to either manipulate or undermine those norms in order to gain access to the corresponding power associated with maleness, or dress as men. Some of these hierarchies are fluid, like me moving from the classroom and onto public transport. If Jessica is alone with Lorenzo, she is part of a supportive in-group community. If Lancelot shows up, her status transforms once again into an outsider. In-group status can be awarded or not depending on the group, and the pathways to inclusion are diverse. In this final scene in Act 3, Lancelot highlights how sometimes it doesn't matter how much you sacrificed. Some prejudices prevent access to in-group status no matter what. In this play, no one has sacrificed more than Jessica to get to the paradise that is Belmont. But she will contend with the problem presented to her in this final scene for the rest of the play. And that takes us to Act 4, the trial scene. Back in Venice, and one of Shakespeare's most discussed scenes, which we'll look at play by play next time. Please subscribe if you want to be notified for when that video is released and for future seasons. Thank you for watching.